Hello. In this episode of Travis Talking, I plan to cover a few topics that are regarding the current situation in the world. Going to go into a little bit of detail of a few things that could be on the horizon for humanity if we allow them to happen, and what we can do to stop such things from happening if we don't agree with them. A lot of them, they all sort of come together, and when you see the bigger picture of what this all could be leading towards, it's quite important that we step up and make the change that is required to stop this from happening. And a lot of it, it's oh yeah, let's go and take to the streets and have a revolution violently. That isn't the answer, and would result in exactly what the current government and the people who own the government want. They want people to get angry and start hating on each other and hating on even them. Even if you hate on them, you are feeding them with the energy that they like. It's fear. Essentially, it's fear. But if you would like to make real positive change, it begins with one, of course, as it always boils down to respecting yourself, getting to know yourself, accepting yourself, and loving yourself. And once you get to a point where you have come to the understanding and of yourself, you will realize that you do not need to seek authority from someone outside. And what does that mean? Well, it means you don't need to have a government tell you what to do. And so that is the next thing, is sort of non-compliance with the current system. If you don't agree with it, if you don't agree with having to pay to live on the planet you were born on, and all of these things, if you don't agree with the incredibly corrupt money system that is currently in place, where every single country is in debt and pays interest on this debt, and the interest is paid by taxing the people. If you don't agree with that, then stop complying. I did a survey quite a long time ago now in my hometown, and I asked about 74 people if they trusted the government, and about six said yes. And that's not very surprising, is it? You ask most people, and they don't trust the government. But then, if you ask them if they vote, how many of those people that don't trust the government don't vote? How many do vote? And so it sparked an idea I had recently, and I'm going to do the survey again, but I'm going to ask a few more questions and ask more people. And I'm going to ask if you trust the government and do you vote, and along with a few other questions. And we'll see what comes of this. Could be quite interesting, actually. So that's the first two steps we can take, is respecting ourselves and then questioning the monetary system. And I guess the third step would be not complying in any and all ways possible. Okay, so some of the things that have been brought to light to me recently that I believe need covering is the one is the China's One Belt One Road system, and it's this economic route that's going to be created, and essentially it would remove the American dollar from the world currency, which is very huge when you think about what that could also bring. And there's many, many more implications of the possibilities that could happen after such a thing is brought into play. And another thing with China, which is very interesting and incredibly horrible when you look at it in one way, is the credit system that is being brought into play and is in the motions at the moment, but it's not mandatory yet, as I'm aware. It'll be beginning of the 2020, I believe, that it becomes mandatory for every citizen to have to be registered and a part of a credit system where you'll be rated on all your for example, your activities online, or where you shop, and what you say to other people online, and a huge amount of other things where basically every activity you ever do is monitored, and it is judged and based on how trustworthy you are as a citizen, like paying your taxes or your rent on time, and all of this stuff. And at the moment, people in China are being ushered into this by giving extra bonus credits for basically ratting out any of your friends who you do not believe are trustworthy citizens. So throwing your friends under the bus to get a few of these credits. So then maybe some of the bonuses are like not having to provide travel documents when traveling, or a little bit of a discount off at hotels, or something, something meaningless trinkets really. Um, but then nonetheless, I assume quite a few people will buy into this, especially with the pretext that the government has assumed that they will be able to get away with forcing this to be mandatory on all of the citizens of China. And this has huge implications when you think about it, uh, especially as if the China One Belt One Road system comes online, and then it becomes a requirement to partake in this, that you have to somehow be affiliated with the credit system that China has. Well, that clearly is very dangerous, as you see that was spread throughout the world, beginning in China. That's why this is incredibly important to be aware of, as this could be some form of a trial run to see how people react. I mean, it's no coincidence at all that it happened to be in a Black Mirror episode where this exact thing is portrayed. And I've only ever watched one episode of that series, and it happened to be that one. And my friend watched it, and I thought I'd watch it as well. And yeah, it was very, very interesting and a little bit creepy. And I don't advise watching any of that series just from watching that one itself. As I suggest, I hypothesize that putting ideas like that in a TV program and then presenting it to people is a form of soft conditioning, to get them over the initial shock of such a system, and then maybe a few years down the line, it's sort of slowly brought in, and people are less shocked by it. It's if you think about it, it'd be a very easy and clever way to do this. So I highly advise being very careful about what you watch and what you spend your time doing. So with all of that, you can see how it would be very dangerous to then be speaking out against the activities of the government, because then you could be seen as a threat to the government, and then as not trustworthy citizen, you have your credit system down, and you then maybe can't buy food, or it costs you more to buy food, or hotel prices, or travel, all this stuff, things that are essential to being alive, could be heavily impacted just because you speak out against the government. I mean, come on, that's what I don't know about you people, but I really would not like to live in a world like that, and I do not believe it has to be like that in any way, shape, or form. It's complete government stepping way out of its boundaries of what it should do. Um, an interesting point to note is how the government really is servants to the people. Something has gotten way out of whack here, and of course, when you follow the bigger picture and you see who actually is in control of the governments of the world, and you follow the money and you see the banking systems and the families, the Rothschild and the monarch figures, and how they're all sort of in this big club, and they all sort of go to the Bilderberg meetings and the Club of Rome and all those organizations. You start to put all that together, and you see. Ah, well, why? Of course, they don't want people to question this system that they are putting out, and the government themselves have just been brought and bribed. They call it lobbying. Lobbying is just bribing by these incredibly, supposedly powerful families, which is interesting because the power they actually have is illusory. It doesn't actually exist. It only exists in the sense that the people believe in it. The people believed in this scam, and so they assume the appearance of power, and then people believe it. It's very, very clever when you look at it, and it's incredibly sinister. And it plays off of people's goodwill and their naivety to not look into that and not suspect that someone would actually, or a group of people would actually be so evil to sell out their entire race for the betterment of themselves. A lot of people wouldn't do that themselves, so they don't think someone else or a group could do that. But it's happening around us right now, slowly, carefully, very tactically. So with all of that, we have the awareness of what's going on, and what we could do about it. And you have a very small ushering in of this kind of credit system with Apple's recent announcement of the trust score system, which, from what I'm aware of, will be monitoring all of the activity on all the Apple devices except their computers, I believe, from what I've researched. And so this is the very beginning of this happening in the Western world. And, people hear about this thing in China and they're like, oh yeah, it's terrible. I could never imagine that. But then it's happening to humans on the planet, and it's slowly being attempted to be brought into the rest of the world. So this is incredibly important to be aware of. And unfortunately, with so many people having, to just keep chasing money to survive on this ending treadmill, it can be a little bit hard for them to actually do a bit of research and find out about these things. So I guess, especially if you're so tired at the end of the day, all you want to do is relax. I can completely understand that. But it should also be mentioned how absolutely important it is to actually stand up and do some research right now into what's going on. You don't have to do heaps, you just a little bit of an understanding of the monetary system would go a long, long way. And yeah, it's just common knowledge for some people, but just in case this is new information for some people, every single country is in debt, apart from two. Like, is it Iran and North Korea? They don't have a central bank, and it's quite funny what's happening with all of those countries at the moment. And so the countries are in debt, and the government borrows these money from the banks with interest, and then with the interest, the people are taxed to pay the interest. And so when you think about that, that's thievery. That's absolute thievery, and it's so clever and it's so subtle, but it's so simple at the same time. And it could be so much different. And just a couple of little things for starts, you could just, if you wanted to keep this current system, two very quick changes we can make: outlaw central banking and outlaw bribery that we call lobbying. That alone would be huge. And then have the government print its own money without the interest. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? And you look at the last president that I'm aware of, or even the last political person who managed to get into a place of power anywhere around the world that I'm aware of. JFK was trying to do this with the American dollar, and he got assassinated. And that seemingly has set an example for any other politician who clearly either is scared to step out, they have become cowards of what may happen to themselves, and through they probably receive threats or bribes or whatever. So with most of the political figures under the thumb of the money masters, as you want to call them, maybe, that leaves salvation to come from the people. It's only ever going to come from the people, and it doesn't matter who you vote in. There's going to be no change through the act of voting. And I highly, highly recommend that everyone listening to this never votes for anyone in this system ever again. That is a very powerful form of non-compliance. And to actually vote for either candidate in the two-party system that's presented to us, or any of the candidates, is essentially saying that you agree with this system. You agree on one level that to partake in it. It's on a metaphysical level, it is agreeing to this system. And we don't get to choose who the candidates are before they are presented to us to pick from. There is no pre-election to the election, so to speak, as there should be. I mean, really, like, it should be people, actual human beings that are part of the system. Your average person that should be put towards being in the government and as a politician. It shouldn't be some sort of what is seen as like celebrity role, where these people are elevated as bit above the average person. They're not. In fact, the government are below. They should be the servants of the people. That is the actual job, to manage these systems that we live in, to have them harmonious towards life. But as we can see, it has been heavily, heavily skewed. And it's something we're going through as a race. And when you look at the bigger picture and you sort of see the progression of how evolution comes into play, and of course, we have to have darkness to be able to choose to be good, right? Evil has its place and is necessary, but what is important is that evil has overstepped its mark. It has gotten out of balance, and now it has to be brought back into balance, and perhaps we could say the balance be brought into the favor of the divine. To As the clock ticks, it comes from one side to the other, and now it is time to push it back into harmonious living, and the divine, and the good, and all the positive things in life. To have a system in harmony with the planet, and in harmony with the people, and in harmony with all of the creatures inhabiting this planet. That sounds pretty good to me. And it takes a while, we have to be patient, but we also have to take action. The time to take action is now. There's no waiting around for some savior to come and help us. It is now, and it starts with the choices you make every single day. Every little choice you make adds up to the total collective timeline that humanity is experiencing. So you have a role to play right now, today. Begins with yourself. And then it begins with coming to understanding of how we are being deceived. And this world is been pulled, this illusion, this matrix has been pulled over our eyes. And it really, really doesn't have to be like that. And there's a very heartwarming and inspiring example of what can happen when people get together with knowledge calmly. In a small town in Australia, Mullumbimby, there's a place called Wilson's Creek, and it's funny, I've actually been there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and I just heard recently that the people managed to get a victory against the Telstra network giant, which is present in Australia. And for anyone who hasn't been to Australia or knows about it, Telstra completely dominates the market there for the mobile networks and internet and all that sort of stuff. And they are a huge, huge company. And a small group of people, they got together and they said, no, we do not want one of your Wi-Fi towers here, because they have these systems where they sort of have Wi-Fi wirelessly. So it's like having a huge Wi-Fi router on a tower and broadcasted all the time. And can you imagine the radiation caused by that, if you think about it, and the unresearched technology that is used and the effects on the human health? And so these people, they got together and they was like, no, we don't want one of your towers here. You can't provide evidence that it doesn't cause harm, and so on and so forth. And they won. They got the victory for their little town. And I will put the link in the description so you can come and check out the website and see what happened there. And I think it's very inspiring and important to mention this, because that's how it begins. It's very organic and it's peaceful, and people, they stand up and they say, no, we do not want this to happen. And I look at my hometown back in England, and I'm very excited to go back there with the message that I have. But anyway, the town hall was recently closed, and the bus station was recently closed. And they also wanted to close a part of the hospital to do with midwives and stuff like that. And it's like, why are we going backwards? It's ridiculous. Like, people have never been paying more taxes than ever before, and supposedly we're advancing as a race and all of this, but we actually, you look at it, it's going backwards. These buildings and services that were provided quite a while ago are now being closed down. And it's like, well, why is that happening? When you're okay, well, maybe it's the government, and of course they have a part to play. But when you see the bigger picture, and you see the incredible debt that the UK is in, and the interest on that debt that has to be paid every single year, and it's tens of billions of pounds, has to be paid on the interest on the debt every single year, and that will go up year by year. So where is the money going to come from? You have to keep taxing people, and you have to keep removing services from the people so you can have more money to pay the debt. And it's like, well, come on, it's actually very clear to see what's going on here. And so imagine if the people got together and they managed to get their own town hall reopened. Like, the building's still there, nothing happened to it. It just some government officials decided it's closed, and everyone believed in it's closed, so now it's closed. It's like, no, that's ridiculous. Let's have this little center of the community be reinstalled and brought back to life. Perhaps we could have some discussions about these people who are um, putting us all under the bus. But oh no, we closed the bus station. But that But you see, like how it could be different. Um, so there are a few uh, avenues which I advise people to do a bit more research about if they haven't already. And it begins with doing this research, and then working on ourselves, and then bringing community back, bringing the common unity back into community. There's a small movement. Well, I don't know how small. There's a movement called the Empower movement. I've heard about recently. I only just heard about it, but I found the name straight away stuck with me. I was like, that sounds like something I could get behind, because what is it? It's the Empower movement, empowering people. People need to realize their own power. We have been lied and tricked to, and we actually have a lot of power as a person. We have reality creation abilities. We have the ability to manifest a reality that is harmonious with us, with our being. And all the time, we are interacting with the field around us, our energy and our emotions. They are going they go into our bodies, and they are resonating and attracting with the field that is all around us. We are a part of it. It is us. And you look a bit into quantum physics, and it can give you some very basic understandings of this. And even from a spiritual perspective, it makes a lot of sense that we are all interconnected, and everything that we see is an illusion, so to speak. And yeah, so that's some very interesting things to take into account when we take into account our power. So now imagine that scales tenfold, and a bunch of people coming together who are solid in themselves and solid in their knowledge, and really demanding change and non-compliance. Imagine, okay, this would be way down the line, but if every person just decided to stop paying their taxes, what would actually happen? Like, really? Like, people believe the taxes pay for the services and all this stuff. They don't really. A lot of it is hugely mismanaged, and is into the pockets of extremely wealthy people, and especially the interest, of course, in the debt. I keep bringing it up, but it is a very important thing to know that these people just create money out of thin air, loan it to the government, and then get money back for nothing. They do absolutely no service. They type numbers on a computer and make money. That's it. They create it out of thin air. I mean, imagine if I tried to do that. If I just one day woke up and was like, oh yeah, da da da, tap on my keyboard. Aha, that's $10,000. Okay, now I'll give you this $10,000. I want $11,000 back. And if you can't pay it, well, then I take your car. How's that? Sounds good? Sounds good to me. There you go. Here's my illusionary money. And then when you can't pay me back, I try and take your car. Oh no, what are you doing? You're stealing from me. Well, yeah, yes I am. Ah, okay. Well, if only I had a huge empire behind me, then it wouldn't matter. I could throw you in jail for not paying me. You see how this works? It's so simple, it's ridiculous. But then that's part of it people can't understand, because they believe it's so complex, when actually it's so simple. So that's a good beginning to some of the things that are going on in the world, and I will keep this Travis Talking series going, and now I'm going to include more current events to keep the finger on the pulse, to bring the light to the dark that is happening around us. And I have really good faith that if people were to bring in themselves into their own power, then the system does not have to carry on in the way it is. It really doesn't. It could be so much better. We could have a harmonious, abundant world very quickly. There, I believe we could clean up the entire world in a year, have free energy, and that and a different monetary system where the governments print their own money. Can you imagine just that alone? What a kind of a world it'd be? Free energy. We don't have to pollute and mine the earth just to get energy to in the most some of the most inefficient ways. I mean, just some of the inefficiency of this current system. We have a whole industry. I did a short time working for one of these businesses, call centers for car failures. People fail, their car break down, they call someone, and then they put them to the mechanic. Well, imagine if we had cars that wouldn't break down by design, because they're actually a lot more efficiently designed, and they didn't have to use fossil fuels. They could use a free energy generated device, and all of this stuff. And then, okay, so the cars are so efficient, we don't even have to repair them anymore. We could have a car lasting 100 years, no problem. Well, then instantly the amount of mechanics we need would disappear, and the people in the call centers would disappear. We wouldn't need them anymore. Well, then, oh no, but people in their jobs, but if we have a different monetary system where people don't have to pay to survive, then we don't need people doing pointless jobs just to survive. Progress, human evolution. We get rid of the unnecessary, pointless stuff to make space for more human time to be put towards more efficient or creative or useful endeavors. So there are just a few things to think about. And it really does require a bit of creativity and thinking outside the box, and to come to a few different ideas about how we could be living on this planet. But just be assured it doesn't have to be like this. And I think that's a good time to end this uh, Travis Talking episode. And it's been very nice for you to partake in my sharing of my thoughts. Goodbye for now.